how do you avoid the pitfalls of failure? Well, this is not a whole lot of rocket science right here. There's really just a few things that are important for you to know and be sure to do. First, don't get into a business that you don't know and understand. Make sure that you are an expert in the business that you get involved in. If you get involved in a business where you are not an expert, then you're probably going to, you're probably going to get an education, and that is usually a pretty expensive education. So be sure that you know your business in depth before you go off and start a business. Now, this next one, develop a solid business plan. That would seem to be just an obvious thing to do, but here's the thing, about 50% of businesses that are started without a business plan. A business plan is such a fundamentally powerful tool for you to use to help ensure success that you just really shouldn't start a business without one. And hopefully you'll come away from this class understanding and realizing the importance, and better yet, understanding and realizing the fundamentals of how to create a good business plan. The next is managing your financial resources. You hear a lot about startup companies in Silicon Valley buying unlimited, Skittles, or, they have lunch rooms, they have playrooms, they have basketball courts. I mean, they have all these toys. What you don't really hear about is that a lot of the times the reason they provide that stuff is because they expect you to work 60 to 80 hours a week. So they don't mind if you take a few hours out during the middle of the week to decompress. But the reality is you have to be very careful about spending your money, because money is an incredibly precious commodity. It literally is the lifeblood of the business. And so there really are sort of 2 or 3 major questions that you have to know the answer to when you start a business. Number one is, how much capital do you need to get the business to the point where it'll generate enough capital to sustain itself? And when it does generate enough capital to sustain itself, will it in fact generate enough cash flow, capital, to grow at a rate that makes it worth growing and getting involved in the business? So in other words, it's all about money. Do you have enough to start the business, and will it generate enough money to sustain itself? And even more importantly, will it generate enough money to make it worth all the effort that it took to get to that end zone? So managing your financial resources is a critical component. And to do that, you have to both use and understand your monthly financial statements. I had a client hire me a few years ago to help them with some general marketing and financial sort of issues they were having. This was a business that was doing about $1.2, $1.3 million a year. And so that's a little over $100,000 a month. So I came and sat in on a board meeting. These are non-professional board people. They're not business people, though they're not lacking in business knowledge. I sat in on my first board meeting, and almost the first question I asked was, okay, can you show me your last 3 years worth of monthly income statements on a spreadsheet? And they just kind of looked at each other with grins and a little bit of embarrassment and said, we don't have it. All they had was annual tax returns. Well, the first thing we had to do in that business was generate monthly financial statements for the last 3 years so I could look and see, because you can't really tell what's going on in the business if you don't have data. You have to have data. And there's nothing more fundamental to to knowing how your business is doing than watching your monthly financial information. And then the last thing is learn to manage people effectively. Actually, not the last thing. The last thing is next. Learn to manage your people effectively. So I am going to suggest that the best managers are managers with kids. So here's why I say that. I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with a staff person that basically goes this way. Set them down on the other side of the table and say, okay, are you looking at me? Are you paying attention? Because I have something important I have to tell you. I want your undivided attention. Look me in the eye. I need you to do this. A, B, C, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, do as I say. Okay, now there might be some collaborative thinking going along with that, but Generally, I'm not talking about a senior vice president. I'm talking about somebody that's sort of a frontline worker, the kind of person that should be on the phone or on the computer, but they're on their cell phone because they can't keep their eyes off their cell phone while they're at work, right? So that's the kind of person we're talking about. So when you're talking with somebody like that, when you have a task for them, you have to basically say, okay, I want your attention for just a moment. Okay, pay attention. Look me in the eye. Here's what I want you to do. Now repeat back to me what it is what I said. I want to hear you say it. They repeat it back. Okay, great. We understand each other. Now, here's when I need to have this done by. And you tell them when it needs to be done. You understand that? When do I need it done? They repeat back to you when it needs to be done. Okay, now, if it's not done, other people are waiting on you to finish that task. So if it's not done by next Tuesday at noon, you're delaying a whole bunch of people. It's costing a bunch of money. There's going to be a consequence. So let's agree to the consequence beforehand so that we're in agreement that what the consequence will be. So, but here's the consequence. The consequence will be you're going to be taken off the job and basically be told to go out and clean the chicken coop or whatever. Okay, do we understand each other? Okay, now we understand. Good, go do it. Now, that's like a conversation with a kid. And I've been a little bit farcical about how I've tried to explain it, but the reality is a little bit less dramatic and a little bit more soft. You have to have those conversations with staff people because especially your mid to low level staff people, they're not professionals that are self-motivators, and they're just like kids. And so I usually tell my students that if you want to really be a good manager, go have a bunch of kids. That's probably the best training I can recommend to you. Okay, that was supposed to be at least partly funny. I have no sense of whether you guys got a chuckle out of that or not, but I'll presume you're all rolling in the floor. Whitney has entered the room. Welcome back, Whitney. All right, so the next thing, and actually important, maybe the most important thing, is that you have to be able to set your business apart from all your competitors. We're going to talk a lot about this, not today, not tomorrow, but soon, called the concept of competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is fundamentally why somebody would come to you instead of a competitor, and what keeps that competitor from getting the same advantage over you. So in other words, a competitive advantage is something that you do that they can't do, and it attracts a customer, right? So if you don't have that, if you don't have a competitive advantage, I'm sorry, I don't care how good you are, you probably don't have a business. So you have to have a competitive advantage in the market. All right, so I don't know, that might be our last slide. Oh, maintain a positive attitude. Business is tough. You're inevitably going to have periods of time when you are struggling, when things are difficult. And so when those times come, it's important for you to have a positive attitude. As soon as you believe that the business is not going to make it, that's the moment in time when the business is going to fail. You have to have an undeniable, absolute certainty that you're going to succeed. Otherwise, you're not. And the only way you can have that is if that comes inside of you, because you have confidence in your vision, your passion drives your vision. You know you're meant to do this, you know you're going to succeed, and you're willing to put in the hard work to make it happen. That positive attitude infuses the entire business. Everybody in that business is drawn to and drives and feeds off of your passion and your positivity, and it's up to you to maintain it at all times.